you are aged over 60, this is something that you need to listen to, particularly if you're in South Africa, because the South African government is set to introduce significant changes to the country's retirement laws by the end of this month. Among the proposed reforms are raising the official retirement age from 60 to 65 and allowing early retirement from the age of 55. Now, though this will come with financial penalties. Now, authorities say that these changes are necessary due to increasing life expectancy and a growing strain on pension funds. But what will these changes actually mean for ordinary South Africans, especially those planning to retire soon? And how will they impact long-term financial planning and broader pension systems? Well, to help us unpack the implications, we're now joined by financial advisor and director at Bryan Hirsch Colley Associates, Bryan Hirsch. Bryan, good to talk to you. I talk to you every once in a blue moon.
Many years since I've spoken to you. Lovely to hear your voice.
No, fantastic. So let's start with the basics of this. Can you explain what the proposed retirement reforms entail and what's driving them?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm not discouraged by people being able to work longer because there's so much forced retirement at such an early age. Many companies are making people retire at 61, 62. And you've got to realize that with longevity, your challenge ahead of you is how do you beat inflation, bearing in mind that your life expectancy can be that much longer. Just on a personal note, I attended a woman's 100th birthday yesterday, a good friend of mine, mother. And so people are living that much longer. And you've got to realize if people save for 25 or 30 years and then live for another 30 years, they haven't made provision for that amount of money. So encouraging, I'm not sure these proposals are going to come into effect because I think there's still going to be a lot of backlash from the unions. But very simply, people retiring a little bit later means that their money is invested for longer. It means they're contributing for longer. And therefore, at least there's a chance of their monies lasting a little bit longer because of inflation. I'm very discouraged about people being able to retire at 55 because they don't realize if you retire 10 years earlier and then 65, your money's got to last not maybe 30 years, but maybe 40 years. And how are you going to beat inflation? Because so many people, when they get to retirement, what they tend to do is become more conservative in their investment approach, and they're not even, and whilst in the retirement fund itself, there's no tax. When you draw funds from a retirement fund, you pay tax. And so the after-tax figure is really problematical. There've been quite a few changes in the last 8 months. 1st of September, we had the change to the two-pot system, which I'm also very concerned about. I don't think the public, I don't think people retiring, I don't think working South Africans understand fully what this means. It's, in the 90s, there was enormous chaos in South Africa when we tried to force members to save monies when they withdrew from funds rather to preserve for retirement. That was done away with. Well, the two-pot system has now created exactly what it was set out to do all those years ago. So, all the time they're tampering with, I think, you've got to remember government may change the government employee pension fund, but they can't suddenly change it to people who are now 60, 61 and say, who are planning to retire at 63, you've now got to work to 65. So there's a lot still to unpack before those regulations or changes to our pension industry comes into being.
Government talks about pension shortfalls. How big of a problem is this? And should people that are planning retirement and having funds being put into these funds be concerned?
Well, when you talk about shortfalls, two events have occurred to create shortfalls. One is poorer investment returns. Bearing in mind, understand there are two types of pension funds. There's a defined benefit pension fund and a defined contribution pension fund. The government pension fund is a defined benefit fund, which means it defines the end results, not defines what you contribute. You as a member will contribute X percent, and the government is responsible for making sure that at retirement your benefit is met, and that would be, call it a 2% benefit for every year you've worked. So if you work for 25 years, 25 times 2 is 50%. You will be entitled to 50% of your pension at retirement, and irrespective of investment returns, irrespective of what the withdrawals have been, will get that as a pension. That's called defined benefit. Defined contribution is when it's defined how much you will contribute and how much the company will contribute, and that will give an end result, whatever that is worth, depending on investment returns. And investment returns have been a lot lower than expected over the last number of years. For a long time, South African pension funds have underperformed to international funds that are invested offshore, although South African pension funds were limited up to 3 years ago how much they could invest offshore. Now it's been increased to 45%. There's still a limitation of how much you can invest in equities and property as compared to government gilts and cash. So that has underperformed. And when they talk about shortfall, they talk about underperformance, but shortfall on a defined benefit fund for government employees has no meaning because they are guaranteed the pension fund. And maybe the government pension fund is running at a deficit because when the actuaries do the calculations of what the contributions must be, and sometimes they're not, that isn't adhered to. Government has been continuing to contribute at lower levels, and the withdrawal rates, the death rates, and investment returns have been less. So from that point of view, that's the shortfall. One of the other shortfalls are that many pension funds in South Africa are not paying over contributions deducted from employee salaries. And I've seen a list of this, and I think that our pension fund officials are not doing enough to penalise the companies. There should be criminal penalties. If you don't pay your PAYE or you don't pay your VAT, it's enormously. But if you don't pay your pension fund contributions deducted from your members' salaries on a monthly basis, then I think that's criminal, and there's not enough done to make sure that money is being paid over, and many funds are running in deficits because monies haven't been paid over, which has two problems. One, if you withdraw, because if on your withdrawal benefit may be calculated incorrectly because they haven't included money that has not yet been received, and two, the most important thing is that the investment on those funds have not been made.
Bryan, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I wish we could have talked for a little bit longer, but we'll get you on again. But thanks so much indeed for your initial thoughts.
Lovely chatting. I don't know. I must have chatted to you 30 years ago. You've been on. How long have you been on air?
We won't give that away. Otherwise, they'll retire me.
God bless you. Okay.
Take care, Bryan. Cheers. Bye-bye. Yeah, he's been a long